Ladies and gentlemen, there is a curious paradox about love and human nature, one that has baffled philosophers, psychologists, and even poets. Why is it that men, so often depicted as stoic and unyielding, find themselves falling harder for the women who choose to let them go? The paradox of human attachment is deeply tied to our understanding of value. At the core of our relationships lies an undeniable truth: what we fear losing, we often cherish most. This isn't merely an emotional reaction, it's a fundamental aspect of human psychology. The less accessible or secure something feels, the more significant it becomes in our eyes. This is why scarcity drives desire not just for material things, but in human connections as well. When a relationship feels guaranteed, it's easy to fall into patterns of complacency. The mind begins to take for granted what is constantly present, assuming it will always remain. However, when the possibility of loss becomes real, the weight of the connection intensifies. It's a startling realization that compels deeper reflection. What does this person truly mean to me? This shift in perception is particularly strong in men, as they are often conditioned to view challenges and stakes as catalysts for action. The threat of losing someone significant can spark an awareness that was previously dormant. It awakens a sense of urgency, a reevaluation of priorities, and a recognition of the emotional depth they may not have fully appreciated. In the realm of relationships, this paradox is a profound force. When a woman steps away, whether out of necessity or self-preservation, she inadvertently amplifies her value in the mind of the man she leaves. It's not a game, it's the raw and undeniable reality of how humans perceive attachment and worth. And in that moment, the man is confronted with a truth he can no longer ignore: the importance of what he might lose. At the heart of any meaningful relationship lies a delicate balance between freedom and control. True respect and admiration are cultivated in a space where both individuals feel free to be themselves, unencumbered by the fear of coercion or manipulation. When a woman chooses to let go, she is making a profound statement, not only about her own independence, but about the respect she demands in return. This act of letting go isn't about indifference or detachment, it's about upholding a principle that relationships must be built on mutual choice rather than force. Men in particular respond to this dynamic in a unique way. When faced with a partner who prioritizes freedom, they are often compelled to examine their own behavior and intentions. A man might ask himself, am I with her because she chooses me, or because I've made her feel she has no other option? A relationship grounded in choice becomes inherently more valuable. It fosters an environment where both parties feel genuinely seen and appreciated for who they are, not for what they can provide or control. Moreover, the act of letting go creates a sense of reverence for individuality. When a woman demonstrates the courage to walk away, she communicates that her worth is not contingent upon anyone else's validation. This kind of self-assurance is magnetic, often prompting men to view her not just as a partner, but as someone deserving of profound respect and admiration. It's a dynamic that redefines the relationship, shifting it from one of dependency to one of shared freedom and mutual respect. This interplay between freedom and respect challenges the traditional narratives of love that often romanticize possessiveness. Instead, it underscores a truth that is often overlooked: love flourishes when individuals are free to stay or leave, and in that freedom lies its deepest strength. Men are often drawn to challenge. It is embedded in their nature, a psychological and even biological inclination rooted in evolution. Throughout history, challenges have been a means for men to prove their worth, establish their strength, and define their purpose. This dynamic doesn't vanish in modern relationships. Instead, it takes on a more nuanced form, where the challenge lies not in conquest or competition, but in understanding, connection, and growth. When a woman lets go, she inadvertently presents a man with one of the most profound challenges he can face: the realization that her presence is not guaranteed. It forces him to confront the reality that he cannot simply rely on complacency or assumption. To keep her, he must rise to meet her standards, to evolve into someone worthy of her trust, admiration, and affection. This act of letting go signals a kind of strength that many men find deeply compelling. It is a reminder that she is not someone to be taken lightly or for granted. Unlike relationships where one partner clings or seeks validation, a woman who steps away communicates a clear message: she values herself enough to walk away from anything less than what she deserves. This is not a rejection, it is a challenge to the man to reflect on his own behavior and intentions. The challenge becomes even more pronounced because it is not one of force or confrontation, but of subtlety and self-awareness. It requires the man to look inward, to question his actions, and to grapple with the emotional consequences of losing someone he may not have fully appreciated. This introspection often leads to personal growth as the man begins to understand that relationships are not about possession or control, but about mutual effort and respect. In this way, the dynamic of challenge operates on multiple levels. It pushes the man to become better, to step out of his comfort zone, and to strive for something greater than himself. It transforms the relationship from a static state into a dynamic force for growth. And in doing so, it makes the bond more meaningful, more valuable, and more likely to endure. Scarcity is a powerful force in human psychology, driving much of our behavior and shaping our perceptions of value. This principle extends beyond material possessions and deeply influences how we view relationships. When something feels abundant or easily accessible, it often becomes undervalued. Conversely, when it is scarce or at risk of being lost, its importance intensifies. This dynamic is especially evident in romantic relationships, where the perceived availability of a partner can significantly impact emotional attachment and desire. When a woman chooses to let go, she creates a sense of scarcity not intentionally to manipulate, but as a natural consequence of stepping back. Her absence leaves a gap, a void that was previously filled with her presence, energy, and connection. For men, this triggers a profound response. The realization that she is no longer within reach forces them to reevaluate her role in their lives. Qualities that may have been overlooked or taken for granted suddenly come into sharp focus. Her unique traits, her kindness, her laughter all become more vivid in her absence. This scarcity effect goes beyond mere longing. It taps into a deeper part of the human psyche where the fear of loss and the desire to reclaim what is valuable intertwine. Men often find themselves drawn back, not out of convenience or habit, but because they now see the woman in a different light. Her decision to let go demonstrates self-worth and independence, qualities that make her even more desirable. Moreover, this dynamic can lead to a heightened sense of appreciation. The man begins to understand that her presence was not something to be assumed or taken lightly. It was a gift, one that he may have failed to recognize fully until it was no longer guaranteed. This newfound appreciation can fuel a deeper emotional connection as he becomes more attuned to her value and more motivated to nurture the relationship should he have the opportunity again. In essence, scarcity magnifies value. It compels people to reflect on what truly matters and to cherish what they might otherwise have overlooked. For men, the absence of a woman who lets go often becomes a catalyst for this reflection, transforming the way they see her and deepening their emotional attachment. Self-worth is the cornerstone of any healthy relationship, and boundaries are its most powerful expression. When a woman sets clear boundaries and is willing to let go if they are crossed, she is making a profound statement about her value. She communicates that she respects herself enough to demand the same respect from others, and that she will not compromise her dignity or well-being for the sake of maintaining a relationship. This act of self-respect is not only empowering, but also profoundly attractive. Men are instinctively drawn to women who exude confidence and self-assurance. A woman who sets boundaries and adheres to them demonstrates a deep understanding of her own needs and an unwillingness to settle for less. This is not about playing games or creating distance for the sake of power. It is about authenticity. It is about saying, "This is who I am, and these are the standards I uphold." This level of clarity and self-respect often inspires admiration and compels men to rise to the occasion. Boundaries serve another crucial purpose. They provide structure and clarity in a relationship. When a woman communicates what is acceptable and what is not, she removes ambiguity. For men, this can be both challenging and motivating. It forces them to evaluate their own actions and behaviors. Are they aligned with the standards she has set? Are they meeting the expectations of someone who values themselves so highly? This kind of introspection can lead to personal growth as men recognize the need to adapt and improve if they wish to maintain the relationship. Furthermore, boundaries signal emotional independence. A woman who is willing to let go rather than compromise her values shows that her sense of self is not tied to the relationship. This independence is deeply appealing because it suggests that she is with her partner by choice, not out of dependence or fear. It challenges the notion of possession in relationships, replacing it with mutual respect and partnership. Men often find themselves reflecting on the power of these boundaries when faced with their implications. Losing a woman who holds herself to such a standard is not just a loss of a partner, but a loss of someone who challenges them to be better. It is a reminder that relationships should elevate both individuals, encouraging them to bring out the best in each other. And in recognizing this, a man may come to understand the true depth of what he had and what he must do to honor it in the future. Regret is one of the most powerful emotions humans experience, capable of leaving an indelible mark on our hearts and minds. In relationships, the fear of regret often emerges most sharply when something or someone significant is lost. When a woman decides to let go, she creates a space for reflection that can deeply impact a man's emotional state. The immediate reaction may be shock or denial, but over time, the absence becomes a mirror in which he is forced to confront the consequences of his actions or inactions. Regret has a unique way of amplifying clarity. It strips away distractions and forces individuals to focus on what truly mattered in a relationship. For a man, this process can be both painful and enlightening. The qualities he once overlooked, the small moments he dismissed, and the presence he took for granted suddenly come into sharp focus. He begins to see the value of the connection he lost, often realizing that it was far greater than he had allowed himself to acknowledge. This fear of regret is deeply tied to the human tendency to idealize what is no longer available. When something becomes inaccessible, our minds naturally attribute greater importance to it. The woman who let go becomes not just a memory, but a symbol of missed opportunities and unfulfilled potential. Her strength in walking away, her independence, and the respect she showed for herself stand out even more starkly in hindsight. The emotional weight of regret also drives introspection. A man may find himself questioning why he acted the way he did, why he failed to meet her needs, or why he didn't fully appreciate her when he had the chance. This self-examination can be uncomfortable, but it is often necessary for growth. Through this process, he gains a deeper understanding of himself and what he values in a partner. Regret, while painful, serves as a catalyst for change. It forces a man to confront his shortcomings and consider how he might approach relationships differently in the future. In some cases, it even sparks a desire to make amends, to try to rebuild what was lost, or to ensure that he never repeats the same mistakes. This fear of regret and the lessons it carries is why the act of letting go can leave such a profound impact. It creates a moment of reckoning that reshapes how a man views both the woman who left and himself. Absence has a way of sharpening our perceptions and altering the lens through which we view the world. When someone we care about is no longer present, the contrast between their absence and the moments they filled becomes painfully clear. This contrast effect is particularly potent in relationships where the loss of a significant other forces an individual to reassess everything they once took for granted. For men, the absence of a woman who has chosen to let go brings a sudden and intense awareness of what has been lost. It's easy to overlook the small gestures, the shared moments, or the unique qualities of a person when they are always within reach. But when those things are gone, they become magnified. Her laughter, her way of comforting him during tough times, her smile, each of these things may have seemed ordinary before, but now they stand out in stark contrast to the emptiness left behind. This contrast not only intensifies the feelings of loss, but also fosters a deeper appreciation for the woman who has walked away. Men are often forced to confront their own complacency, realizing that they did not fully value what was in front of them until it was no longer there. In this sense, absence does not merely highlight the void, it also illuminates the reasons they were drawn to her in the first place. The contrast effect goes beyond mere nostalgia. It shifts the emotional weight of the relationship from the routine of everyday interactions to something more profound. The things that were once routine are now seen through a different lens, one colored by the longing for their return. Her absence makes the value of her presence undeniable, and in this recognition, the relationship itself is transformed in the man's mind. This process can trigger a period of reflection, where the man evaluates not just what he has lost, but also how he behaved in the relationship. He may realize that his appreciation for her was not always evident, and that he missed the opportunity to show her the depth of his feelings. The absence, therefore, acts as both a reminder of what was and a catalyst for self-awareness. The contrast effect amplifies the emotional significance of a relationship. It creates a space for men to reassess the role of the woman in their lives, and it highlights how profoundly her presence affected them. In this moment of absence, the man often discovers a newfound admiration and respect for the woman who let go. And this awareness can alter his understanding of what truly matters in love and relationships. Men often find themselves grappling with a complex set of emotions when faced with the loss of a woman they care about. One of the most significant reactions is a deep desire for responsibility. It's an almost instinctual response and urge to take ownership of one's actions, to step up and address the consequences of the loss. The departure of a woman who has chosen to let go is not just a personal loss, but also an awakening to the responsibility a man has in the dynamics of a relationship. At its core, this desire for responsibility stems from an innate need to improve, to become a better version of oneself in the face of challenge. Losing a woman who has established her independence and self-worth forces a man to confront the reality that he may not have done enough to nurture the relationship, to demonstrate his value, or to meet her emotional needs. This realization can be difficult, but it often becomes the catalyst for growth. Men, in their most profound moments, crave responsibility not just for their own well-being, but for the well-being of those they care about. The woman who lets go sends a clear message. She values herself enough to walk away if necessary. This creates a stark contrast for the man, who may be motivated to prove that he is worthy of her affection and capable of upholding the standards she has set. The desire to take responsibility doesn't stem from a place of guilt, but from a realization that relationships require effort, accountability, and emotional maturity. In this moment of clarity, a man may feel a strong urge to evolve, to show that he is capable of offering the depth of commitment that a woman like her deserves. This awakening is often accompanied by a recognition that responsibility is not a burden but an opportunity for growth. To be responsible in a relationship means to care for the emotional needs of both parties, to take ownership of one's actions, and to contribute to the emotional and mental well-being of the other person. Men, when faced with the loss of a woman who has set the bar high, are frequently inspired to rise to that challenge. The realization that he has let her slip away forces him to acknowledge the areas in which he can improve and motivates him to make changes, not just for the sake of the relationship, but for his own personal growth. Ultimately, the desire for responsibility is rooted in a deeper understanding of what it means to be in a relationship. It's about shared effort, mutual respect, and the willingness to nurture what is important. When a woman chooses to let go, it forces a man to look inward and evaluate whether he is truly ready to meet the demands of a meaningful connection. This reflection, while painful, is often the key to unlocking the kind of emotional maturity necessary for future success in relationships. There is a subtle yet powerful allure and mystery, one that stirs the imagination and captivates the heart. When a woman lets go, she introduces a level of unpredictability that can be deeply intriguing. The absence she creates is not just physical but emotional, leaving a gap that sparks curiosity and draws the man's attention in ways that constant proximity never could. The unknown becomes magnetic, and in her decision to step back, the woman becomes a mystery he can no longer easily decipher. This sense of mystery doesn't arise from deliberate manipulation or games. It is an organic result of a woman's independence and self-assurance. By choosing to let go, she signals that her life and sense of self are not contingent on her relationship. This emotional autonomy creates space for the man to wonder about her thoughts, her emotions, and the life she is leading in his absence. It's not just about missing her physical presence, but about the longing to understand the fullness of who she is, to see beyond the surface, and to explore the layers of her identity that he may have never fully appreciated. Men are often naturally drawn to that which they cannot fully possess or control. In relationships, there's a certain attraction to the idea of uncovering someone's depth, learning about them in ways that are not immediately accessible. When a woman steps away, she introduces an element of uncertainty and emotional distance that challenges the man to seek understanding, to rekindle his pursuit, and to prove that he is worthy of uncovering the complexities of her heart. This dynamic sparks a sense of adventure, where the pursuit of her becomes more than just a quest for affection. but a deeper search for meaning and connection. The mystery of her absence often leads to a deeper reflection on what the man truly values. As he searches for answers in the space she has created, he begins to understand that the woman who let go was not someone to be easily defined or pigeonholed. She was an individual with her own desires, goals, and strengths, which were perhaps overlooked in the routine of the relationship. Now, with the veil of mystery shrouding her, the man is forced to confront the full extent of her importance, and he finds himself captivated by the depth of what he never fully explored. This sense of mystery also carries a paradox. The more elusive she becomes, the more her worth is amplified in his mind. The absence of a woman who chooses to let go doesn't just leave a gap, it creates a space for reflection, for growth, and for rediscovery. In this absence, the man's emotional connection deepens, not because of her physical presence, but because of the enigma she becomes in her absence. The more distant she is, the more he wants to understand her, to reconnect with her, and to prove that he can meet the emotional challenge she represents. In this way, letting go doesn't just separate two people, it transforms the relationship into something more profound, more layered, and more compelling. The mystery that arises from her choice to step away becomes an emotional magnet, drawing him in, awakening desires that were dormant, and pushing him to pursue something greater than just the connection they once had. It becomes a journey not of possession, but of understanding, growth, and a deeper form of emotional intimacy. Emotional growth is a complex and often uncomfortable process that requires self-awareness, vulnerability, and a willingness to confront one's shortcomings. The decision of a woman to let go can act as a powerful catalyst for a man's emotional development. When faced with the prospect of losing someone meaningful, a man is often forced to take a hard look at his own behaviors, patterns, and emotional responses. It is in this confrontation with his own emotional landscape that he begins to uncover areas for growth and transformation. For many men, the initial reaction to a woman stepping away is one of resistance, an emotional reaction driven by the fear of loss or rejection. However, as time passes and the emotions settle, a deeper reflection takes place. The man starts to realize that his emotional reactions to the situation are often the result of unresolved feelings, old patterns, or unaddressed insecurities. In the absence of the woman who let go, he gains clarity about the role she played in his life. And more importantly, he gains insight into the emotional areas that he may have neglected or taken for granted. This period of emotional distance can be uncomfortable, but it also presents an opportunity for introspection. The man may begin to examine how he expresses his emotions, how he handles conflict, and how he navigates intimacy. Often, this reflection reveals patterns that are limiting or self-sabotaging. Maybe he hasn't been fully honest with his feelings, or perhaps he's been avoiding vulnerability to protect himself from potential hurt. The absence of a woman who has chosen to let go forces him to confront these patterns head-on, leading him to a deeper understanding of his emotional needs and limitations. The emotional growth sparked by this experience is not just about mending what has been broken, but about evolving into a more emotionally mature individual. Men are often conditioned to suppress emotions, to remain stoic or distant in the face of vulnerability. The process of confronting the loss of someone significant challenges these norms, forcing a man to become more attuned to his emotional world and more capable of expressing himself authentically. The fear of losing the woman who has stepped away can push him to develop the emotional tools needed to navigate future relationships with greater empathy, awareness, and maturity. In many cases, the emotional growth that takes place after a woman lets go can lead to significant changes in the way a man approaches his relationships. He may become more open, more communicative, and more willing to engage in deeper levels of emotional intimacy. The absence of the woman he cares about creates an emotional space where he is forced to become a better version of himself, not just for her, but for his own growth and well-being. In this way, letting go becomes a transformative experience, one that catalyzes a deeper understanding of his emotions and the way he relates to others. The emotional evolution that occurs as a result of this process is often long-lasting, reshaping how a man approaches love, vulnerability, and connection in the future. The lessons learned during this time of introspection are not quickly forgotten. In fact, they can inform future relationships, leading to greater emotional depth, healthier communication, and a more mature approach to partnership. In essence, the act of letting go is not just a separation, it is an invitation for growth, one that challenges a man to rise to a higher level of emotional awareness and maturity. At the core of any deep connection lies the desire to feel seen and understood. Men, like everyone, long to feel that their partner recognizes them not just for their accomplishments or external traits, but for their innermost being. When a woman lets go, she indirectly forces a man to confront his own vulnerabilities, his fears, and his sense of self. This act, far from being a rejection, often serves as a profound invitation to reflect on how he sees himself in relation to the woman he has lost, and how he might come to understand her better in return. When a woman steps back, the man is left with a moment of clarity, an emotional space where he is forced to acknowledge the qualities he once took for granted. Perhaps it was her patience, her way of listening to him when he needed to speak, or her ability to offer comfort without words. It is in this void, created by her absence, that the man begins to realize that the connection they shared was more than just a series of interactions, it was a deep emotional understanding. Her decision to let go allows him to see not only what he has lost, but also what he never fully appreciated when it was present. This realization often leads to a sense of longing not just for her physical presence, but for the emotional connection that once existed. He begins to understand that being seen and understood by her was a source of deep validation, and in her absence he recognizes how essential this was to his own emotional well-being. The man starts to look inward, asking himself why he failed to nurture the emotional bond they shared. Did he take her for granted? Did he fail to express his own emotions or share his vulnerabilities? At the same time, this process forces him to consider her perspective as well. By letting go, the woman has communicated that she too must be seen and understood for who she truly is, not just as a partner or someone to fulfill his needs. She has a world, a life, and emotions that are as valid as his own. This realization shifts the focus from the loss to a deeper understanding of the importance of mutual respect and emotional reciprocity in a relationship. Men often come to understand that being seen and appreciated is a fundamental need for both partners, and is not something that can be assumed or taken for granted. As the man reflects on the emotional bond that has been broken, he also begins to understand the importance of emotional vulnerability and the need to cultivate a space where both partners can truly be seen. He may recognize that he failed to offer her the emotional security she needed, or perhaps he was too closed off, too guarded to share his own vulnerabilities. This moment of introspection often brings about a desire for change, a realization that future relationships require a greater capacity for emotional openness and a deeper appreciation for the emotional needs of others. In the end, the decision of a woman to let go serves as a catalyst for the man to reflect on how deeply he was seen and understood, and how that sense of being seen can shape the future of his emotional connections. Through this process, the man often discovers that in truly understanding the woman who let go, he gains a deeper understanding of himself, his emotional needs, his fears, and the ways in which he can grow to foster more meaningful and reciprocal connections in the future. Love, in its true sense, is not a static force, but a dynamic process that requires continuous nurturing effort and attention. When a woman decides to let go, she is not merely ending a relationship, she is also challenging the very notion of love as something that can be taken for granted. This decision to step away acts as a reminder that love is not unconditional in the sense that it will always be there regardless of circumstances. Instead, it requires consistent effort, respect, and emotional reciprocity. For many men, the realization that love must be earned and maintained rather than passively enjoyed can be a transformative experience. When a woman lets go, it often serves as a wake-up call, a moment in which the man is forced to face the reality that love requires action, not just words or feelings. It is easy to become complacent in relationships, assuming that love will endure as long as both parties are present. However, when one person chooses to leave, it strips away the false sense of security and forces the other person to reevaluate what they were willing to do to keep the connection alive. This confrontation with the fragility of love brings with it an awareness of the importance of effort. Men may begin to reflect on the times they took their partner for granted, or the moments when they failed to show their affection or appreciation. The absence of the woman who let go suddenly magnifies the importance of the small gestures, those acts of kindness, communication, and consideration that are necessary to foster a lasting bond. Her departure often highlights the emotional labor that was either overlooked or underappreciated. The decision to let go is not a rejection of love altogether, but a reassertion of its importance. When a woman steps away, she is signaling that love should not be assumed or taken for granted. It must be earned and continuously nurtured. This realization is crucial for men who may come to understand that love requires not only effort but also vulnerability. Relationships thrive when both partners are willing to invest in each other, to give and receive emotionally in ways that honor both individuals. In this process, the man is often forced to take a hard look at his own behavior, his own commitment to the relationship. Did he take the easy route, assuming that love would always be there, even without the effort to maintain it? Or did he actively work to strengthen the emotional bond, to show his partner that she was valued and appreciated? The woman's decision to let go forces him to answer these questions, often bringing to light the gaps in his own emotional engagement. Ultimately, the act of letting go shifts the focus of love from something passive to something active. It transforms love from a feeling that simply exists into a conscious effort that requires time, care, and attention. Men who experience this shift often leave the situation with a newfound understanding of what it truly means to love, both in terms of the emotional effort it takes and the respect it demands. They understand that love is not an entitlement, but something that must be continuously nurtured, a responsibility that both partners share in equal measure. This deeper understanding of love's nature can forever change the way they approach relationships, ensuring that they are more intentional, attentive, and emotionally present in the future. In conclusion, the act of letting go, especially when done by someone we deeply care about, is not just a moment of loss, it is a profound catalyst for personal growth, reflection, and transformation. For men, it serves as a wake-up call, urging them to reevaluate their behavior, their emotional maturity, and their approach to love and relationships. Through the pain of regret, the clarity of absence, and the emotional awakening it sparks, men are offered the opportunity to grow into more self-aware, emotionally capable individuals. This process reveals the complexities of what it means to truly connect with another person. It teaches the value of effort, responsibility, and vulnerability. The act of letting go strips away the illusion that love can be taken for granted, reminding us all that love, in its truest form, is something that must be continuously earned and nurtured. As men reflect on these lessons, they are given the chance to understand the power of being truly seen, both by others and by themselves. In this space of introspection, they are equipped not only to learn from their past relationships, but to approach future ones with a greater sense of empathy, emotional depth, and intentionality. The woman who chooses to let go in many ways opens the door to a deeper, more meaningful connection with herself, with the man who has lost her, and with the world around her. Letting go, though painful, offers a rare opportunity to transform love into something more profound, more reciprocal, and more resilient. It's through this process of loss that we often find the truest forms of understanding, growth, and ultimately a deeper connection to both ourselves and the ones we care for.